I love survival. Horror. Being stranded in a location and pitted against horrors straight from the nightmares of this world and beyond. From the simple zombie to the demons of a sexually violent mind, or even phantoms of the past dragged into the present to reenact their sadistic trades. Meanwhile, you at best have just enough supplies to survive, but rarely get any sort of OP upper hand. But the Forest is labeled as a survival game, and that genre hasn't mixed well with me. There's been a few hits like Subnautica or Zombiercer, but there's been many, goddamn there's been many misses that either failed to connect with me or fell way below expectations. So what happens when a survival game goes more into the horror? Well, let's descend into the cave systems and map out what is one of my personal favorite survival games. Starting off the game, you get your first scare, that being your son's hair. Sure, it scares the creature off the wing, but something else has gone wrong, and you crash onto the island below. Red Man comes to kidnap your child, and the game begins proper. You have a list of missing passengers, an objective, a survival axe, and enough food, drink, and medicine to go around. If you played survival games before, you know the drill. Start building a base. It's this moment you'll learn this game is also a lumberjack simulator. The sounds of development will eventually draw out the local crackheads. This is where we see the meat of the game, the cannibals. They aren't typical zombies or horde-rushing enemies typical to the genre. No, they prefer the watch. Like the dickless cucks they are. Staying just out of sight for the most part, they'll ignore you, until you have a few too many sniffing around. Sure, you've beaten back the crackheads, but they give way to more sophisticated drug users, ones that employ weapons, armor, lights, and even incendiaries.
Well, that's not very cash money of you.
The cannibals are a surprisingly fun enemy to fight. The lesser ones will flee even with a number advantage. Some will climb the trees, others will patrol the island, they'll build strange effigies, recover fallen cannibals, and steal food. Just like actual druggies. If things pop off, there's ways to ward off the flesh eaters, and despite what some say, flesh is surprisingly eco-friendly. A dead cannibal can be repurposed into an effigy to scare them off, they can be cremated to supply bone armor, or you can join the cannibal lifestyle. You also don't have to scrap with the locals, as by largely avoiding conflict, the game can become a very tense Cold War. If you deploy enough catapults in range of a cannibal village, you can recreate the Cuban Missile Crisis even. However, things are likely to take a turn, so live like your paranoid uncle, because in truth, he's not that paranoid. In addition to the local savages, there's also the local wildlife. They didn't get the best parts of the AI pie. Sure, rabbits and such will flee, but birds, deer, and others are prone to seeking assisted suicide via the executioner's chop. Even gators, who are fucking assassins in this game, are prone to glitching out. Speaking of glitches, there's enough evidence to lay down the accusation that this game is unfinished. There's several areas a person can get stuck. Items have glitched through the floor, as well as enemies through the roof. Several craft options have little to zero purpose. A torch actually makes the already dark even darker. Multiple gardens I've made have failed to be accessible, and entire zones like the mountain feel pointless outside of an item or two. And I say pointless, well, one of the most difficult items to build is essentially required if you don't want to be freezing constantly. Then there's the flaming rock.
Guys, I got a rock with cloth on it.
Fuck yeah, rock with cloth. What the fuck is... Can you just light it on fire? Tyler has a flaming rock!
No, get rid of it! No, get rid of it!
Tyler, throw it! Tyler, throw it!
No!
Hold L2, press R2.
After a few days, you'll start to see horrors surfacing from the various caves. There's 3 types you'll primarily see, not counting reskins, as well as 2 endgame bosses I'll get to later. They're disgusting mutations that take a fair amount of effort to take down. If you don't have traps handy, expect a fight. There's some slight variety in how they combat you, but for the most part, they're just tanky hard hitters. Your character is a survivalist, not a fighter. While on normal this can be overcome through various aids such as poison and fire, higher difficulties can turn enemies into serious damage sponges. You can craft your weapons that have better stance with glass, teeth, and feathers. However, while the cloth is fine, everything else comes off looking rather stupid. Yes, while this is a survival game, it's simplified over simulated. Food goes rotting quickly, but even on the hardest difficulty, it's plentiful. You can put food up on drying racks to preserve it indefinitely. Soda is great for both hydration and energy. Meanwhile, if you're freezing, chug some booze. I would hope I don't need to tell you that's actually a horrible, horrible idea. Do not do that. So if you're like me, you lucked out and built a base in the safe zone. There's always some degree of danger, but the difference can be the occasional Virginia or becoming the Omega Man. Never build on land bridges. Don't build near cool trees either. Yeah, the cannibals have specific locations they really like. The only genuinely safe choice is a boathouse. Outside of a shark I've only heard of, there's no danger to living the Viking Raider life. Is that why there's so many axe options? But in order to get those axes, you'll need to descend into the cave systems. You'll get there one of two ways. Either you'll drop down willingly, or get an ass whooping, boy! I really like this setup. It serves as both a grace mechanic for new players, as well as a bit of a speedrunning tactic, because once in the cave there's no enemies immediately. The closest is one lone cave cannibal, who's way down there. But here, you'll find various supplies, including a map, and the above village is likely to be empty, having tons of cloth for the taking. Also some dynamite and red paint. I'll get to that later. While the force of this game's title, the caves for me are just as interesting. Topside, the enemy can hide among the foliage and stalk you. However, you can rather easily evade them. You also have a trap-ridden base to hole up in, at least for a little while. In the caves, you don't have that. You don't know what's outside of your light. From your trusty lighter to torches to flares, it's basically impossible to light up the entire cave at once. Cannibals can be heard echoing off the walls. Some sleep and others will become alert when you wake them. Exploration is required though. These caves hold creatures, but they also hold items needed to survive and progress the main story. That said, there's only 2 items you truly need to reach the end of the game, that being the rebreather and the climbing pick. I suppose there was enough similarities to the Descent that this game needed a climbing pick at some point. My only complaint with the caves is that the AI can be manipulated into cheese tactics. I don't mean climbing a rock to stay out of reach, I mean there are areas where you have to blow up to progress. While crouched there, the AI will not go for you. If I had to do a few things to make the caves scarier, I would start by allowing the basic cave cannibals to roam around a bit more, able to traverse from cave to cave. Also have something climb the walls. That would scare the shit out of me at least. One other addition I'd put in is to have a few cannibals respawn. Yeah, once you clear a cave, it's cleared. The enemies will not respawn outside of glitches or the player simply not executing a downed enemy. Honestly, given the fact that you can find plenty of supplies down in the caves or cannibalize the cannibals if you're on normal with no penalty, you can survive as a tunnel rat. You don't even need to bother with the base. The base building's optional, but it's also kind of worthless. I'll be getting into the story spoilers now, so skip to the time marked on the screen unless you don't care. The story, it's a bit messy, but pretty cool. It honestly reminds me of the good era where the Sci-Fi Channel put out strange yet endearing films that could range from so bad they're good to genuinely good films. So throughout your time on the island, the apparent goal is to reach the bottom of a sinkhole. While spelunking, you'll come across various collectibles that show you aren't the first non-cannibals on this island. For starters, there were Christian missionaries who have evidence all over the island. Those boarded up sections of the cave are covered in crucifixes. There's also strange markings as well as corpses that appear to have died where they stood. But the main former occupants concerning you are the Sahara Corporation. Evidence of them can be found all over the island, from crates along the coast to surveyor equipment and dead surveyors, possibly even some business partners. Fighting your way down to the sinkhole, you'll take a small passage even deeper. After passing a few strange doors, you'll come across the door. Using the keycard reveals a red hallway, same paint as the red man, and the power-up. See, when you paint yourself red, the cannibals will either run, hide, or worship you. Some can be provoked in the fighting, but for the most part, it makes them docile. Making your way into the Sahara facility, it becomes clear that something very wrong has happened here. The place is mostly dead, with various states of destruction, suicide, and occasional cannibals wearing the faces of the staff, just in case you thought maybe they were just having a bad day. But what happened here? So the strange doors belong to what the wiki calls the Ancient Ones. It's pretty clear that both the cannibals and the mutants have been on this island for some time, as the missionaries have sketches of at least one of the mutants. A company called Sahara Therapeutics buys the island and didn't keep it too private. Yeah, you can find magazines talking about the possibility of a marker giving eternal life. Well, the project was called the Jarius Project and marketed as a way to heal terminally ill children. This is largely how they got so many children volunteers to experiment on. The primary experiment is what we discover, some sort of resurrection device. It led to the monstrous mutations of the children. The program was headed by Dr. Cross, who brought his daughter Megan Cross to the island. During an incident involving an armsy, Megan was killed. Upon reaching the resurrection room, we find Dr. Cross has been killed. In the same room, we find Timmy, who is also dead.
Timmy!
Yeah, whole point of the game. This seems more impactful if I wasn't wearing creeper armor. That's my bad. Ooh, yeah, game put in this machine, very painful. It's a great scene, and I like the bonus of if you found all the pieces of Timmy's toy, which you should, you fucking monster. But then, Daddy gets an idea. Following the bloody footprints, you eventually happen upon Megan. She reminds us of the opening. We then fight this little girl? Wait, what? The reason? This girl gets killed when the armsy breaks out during one of the tests. And the scientists needed a live subject to bring her back. Sadly, there's a slight problem. Just a slight little problem. How far a father goes for their kids, I swear. Yeah, apparently the scientists were trying to get the longer life of the resurrection machine without the side effect of becoming horrific monsters. It kinda worked, but clearly isn't foolproof. The fight here is great. Sure, the hitbox can be difficult for something like arrows, but if you've got the flare gun or the flintlock, it can be much easier. Armor is a must, as is soda, so you can maintain energy. The room is nice and open, allowing you to run around. Some of the attacks can look kinda goofy, like the spin attack, but mechanically, it works for trying to keep up and hit the player. Whose small detail I didn't mention earlier gets this like little adrenaline boost. It's not listed anywhere else and doesn't use up a meter, but you move slightly faster when near enemies sprinting. I just thought that was interesting. You get a hit, you can actually get away from an enemy a bit quicker. Eventually, winning the fight, the player goes to recreate the resurrection, despite everything we've seen. You know, he might be an axe man, but he's definitely dull enough to be a hammer bro. I suppose a father who spent all his time to save his kid would try everything. If we follow the trajectory of attempts, this one might actually work. But two negatives don't make a positive, and a live subject is needed. You may be asking yourself, well, how did Dr. Cross take down a plane? Well, there's a second artifact. Here the player is given a choice: complete the circle and bring us right back to the start, or give up and accept the loss of your son. I did not spend 10 hours of gameplay to leave empty-handed. The boys come in with me. Yeah, the forest gets very sci-fi at the end. Not only are we activating the EMP Black Healer, bringing a fucking plane down. It did say we needed a live sample. Later you're shown on a talk show where Timmy has a little tizzy, but unlike Megan, it doesn't turn him into a monster. Fast forwarding to his early 20s, you see Timmy is still struggling with the mutation, and there's sequel bait for a sequel. Which I don't know is the case for Sons of the Forest. I haven't played it yet. I hope it is. I hope we see Timmy again. I'd like the story to be continued. Ending B has you stay on the island building a berry farm and chilling. There's some endgame content in the form of the boss respawning, and also the worm named John. He's okay, if a little strange. Definitely interesting though. There's also a tool for aggro and pacifist mode. The Forest is a fun survival horror game with light survival elements. It's not as harsh as Green Hell, but it's harder than Minecraft. While I do enjoy the game on hard survival due to the enemies being way too spongy, I can find the game oddly calming on normal. This isn't Hotline Miami for me, but few things are. This is enjoyable. If you want the game to become more fun, just play multiplayer. The number advantage of 4 players makes the games much easier, while topside it allows you to get a base up and running much faster. On the other hand, it also leads to cannibalism a lot quicker, and will piss off the locals a lot quicker. But while this game is finished, it's also not finished, namely stuff like the sanity meter. Yeah, if you eat human flesh or don't sleep, it can hurt you mentally, at least on paper. In reality, it's an unfinished mechanic that only serves to give you access to effigies that can scare the enemy away. Honestly, being insane is a good thing here. It's like a Lovecraft novel. If you're the guy who's insane, none of this hurts you. I mean, our guy was willing to make a bone chandelier right after crashing. He may not have all his screws tightened down to begin with. Also, I've heard many people say, why is our character so good at surviving? Well, a pickup in the cockpit show that he's a TV survivalist guy named Eric Leblanc. Given that he's supposed to survive the game, I'm guessing he's more Survivor Man and less Bear Grylls. If you like horror or survival games, or just like brawling with naked dickless men, give The Forest a play. It's got a story worthy of the golden era of the Sci-Fi Channel, while having a more interesting enemy than its competitors in the market. I look forward to having the sequel on the channel here in the coming days. It looks really good, but it has me worried with some aspects, namely the usage of guns. I always figured The Forest was more of a melee game, and I hope that the sequel doesn't go the way of Condemned 2. The series story is already giving me flashbacks to Condemned. I mean, on the surface I can follow along, but there's still questions. How was the facility actually reached? We have 2 access points. One is past an ancient door, the other requires a rebreather to swim to the facility. I'm just saying, a single helicopter pad being shown could have solved this. We don't explore the facility much, so it's plausible. That, or the front doors on the other side of the island that we never go to. Also, who are the cannibals? Something created them, and there's mutated babies, so it raises the question of where does procreation start and resurrection machine mutation end? Also, this island is supposedly northern Canada, so not too far from civilization, but far enough to still be in wilderness. That said, and I know how difficult searches can be, there's a lot of dead parties up here, from a camera crew, the mountain climbers, a tennis team, and even camping groups. Now, I can believe that Sahara bought the island and hid it off from law enforcement, but there's some old casualties up here, and bodies are beginning to pile up. Also, there's still the corpses left frozen in place. Why the hell did that happen? The story was added later in development, and it shows. However, there's enough done well that I can recommend this game. If you've enjoyed this review and want to see more of this type, be sure to subscribe and like the video. I plan on playing through the sequel and dropping a review come its exit from early access. Next on the list is either going to be a game from my childhood, or a zombie game that I have a strange relationship with. Either way, I hope to see you all there. Have a good one, and remember, hanging upside down can really decompress your back. Maybe the cannibals just figured you were a little stressed, and you killed them for that. Then you ate them. Yeah, think about that. Who's the monster, motherfucker? Yeah.